Hello. Now we'll talk on the same day when we talked about Eero Saarinen. We'll also talk about his son, Eero Saarinen, a famous North American architect, born in 1910 and died in 1961. At 51, he could have lived longer. Let's read a little bit about him. Eero Saarinen, born on August 20th, so on the birthday of his father, and died in September 1961, was a Finnish American architect and industrial designer noted for his wide-ranging array of designs for buildings and monuments. Saarinen is best known for designing the Washington Dulles International Airport outside of Washington, D.C., the TWA Flight Center in New York City, and the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri. He was the son of the noted Finnish architect Eero Saarinen. This was the man, and he was an accomplished, an influential architect. There are other buildings done by him which are remarkable, and we are going to see some of them. He built also for Yale University. Yes, he had a remarkable father, and he himself was remarkable. Too said that he died at 51. Some drawings by Eero Saarinen. He built this arena, and it is a remarkable building. He was able to switch, so to speak, between rectangularity and organic architecture. So he explored in various ways architecture. This is a sketch for the TWA building at the JFK Airport in New York City, which was built. A courageous architect. We need more like him. This is the St. Louis monumental arch. Now, we begin in 1929, 1937, a remodel. It was a studio and home, which we already saw. He worked with his father on this building. The Swedish Theater, also he worked with his father, 1935, 1936, the Swedish Theater in Helsinki, remodeling. So they just remodeled the building. It was not a creation that came into being ab ovo. I don't know exactly. Maybe they work mainly at the inside of the building. It's possible. The Fenton Community Center in Michigan. Now we are in the United States also working with his father, 1937, 1938. Community Center in the United States. Dispenser House, Michigan. First building designed independently. So in 1937, 1938, he designed this building by himself without his father. Not yet, you know, that those skillful buildings that he designed later, but a first attempt to, in a way, to free himself from his father. Hall, building Saarinen designed in Michigan's Copper Country, designed in conjunction with his father. So he came back, I guess, you know, some buildings he designed with his father, some buildings without his father. House, again with his father and someone else. Maybe not very spectacular. Looking at this building, we do not have, you know, we do not have the intuition of what was to come from his hand, so to speak, and his mind and his imagination. But I guess a comfortable house without too many risky or risked steps in its conception. The music hall in Buffalo, we already saw it, that he designed, he contributed to the building, designed together with his father, is designated a National Historic Landmark in 1989. We saw it in Buffalo, both Eliel Saarinen and Eero Saarinen, father and son, working together for this building. This one also we saw before in the presentation on Eliel Saarinen, but he also contributed Perkins and Will, an important architecture firm in the United States, in Winnetka. And now, what is this? Music center, the music center buildings. His father, yes, his father was present here as well. Well, we saw this building as well. Another house, 1941, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 1941, 1942. Eero Saarinen. Grasshopper Chair. He made some significant you know, pieces of furniture, and we are going to see a few of them. 1946. Like other Finnish architects, he was skillful at designing furniture as well. It's enough to think of Alvar Aalto. Comfortable and elegant. A chair is a possibility for an architect to, you know, assert himself or herself. You know, it's not a building. And you can do a design for a chair without a client. Now, the problem is afterwards, if you find a producer, someone to, you know, hopefully mass produce it. But it is a possibility for an architect to design a chair or several chairs, because it's, as I said, you don't need a social commission or a private commission. You can do it in your spare time, so to speak. This one also we saw before. And another chair designed for Knoll Associates, from 1945-1950. He was very prolific in the field of furniture design. A womb chair and ottoman, also for Knoll Associates, 1946-1948. He was quite successful with his furniture designs. You can tell the aesthetics belong to mid-20th century. Eero Saarinen. Now the Chrysler Church Lutheran in Minneapolis, we saw it. So he contributed to this building as well, together with his father. Now the Gateway Arch from 1947 to 1965, designated a National Historic Landmark in 1987 in St. Louis, Missouri, is a monumental arch which was supposed to symbolize the triumphant advance of the white man westwards in the United States. The problem is I find it a little bit too emphatic. You can tell how huge it is if you discern the very modest, almost minuscule silhouettes of the cars. It's huge. I personally find it too celebratory and too monumental. And when we think that St. Louis was and maybe still is the crime capital of the United States, you wonder, such an emphatic optimism was, well, at his time, maybe it wasn't the crime capital of the United States, but some years ago it was St. Louis for some years, and maybe still is. This made me launch a competition about, the House of Crime to create some kind of opposition to the arch, to express the harsh realities of St. Louis, the dark side of St. Louis. And I received a few interesting projects, particularly the one by Shahira Hamad. So again, this arch, monumental as it is, and again, please look at the cars, expresses a white optimism, if I am to call it so, which is was not and is not without shadows. Let's also reflect on the fact that the Europeans who came to the United States, who crossed the ocean, also they created uncomfortable and very questionable conditions for the Native American Indians. The poor Native American Indians were thrown in, they were marginalized, almost extinguished in a way. So this arch, I find it problematic, architecturally and ideologically. I don't think there are such great reasons to be so celebratory about the advancement of the Europeans into the land of what became the United States of America. Again, this arch is in the crime capital of the United States. So what is to be celebrated here? Again, at the time when it was built, maybe it was not. It didn't have this infamous, attribute, the city. But recently it had, maybe still has. But this is the arch of the colonists, and it bothers me as such. It's the arch of colonialism, in a way. The Europeans taking over the land of North America and celebrating this taking over in an emphatic and I would say demagogical way. I have the chance to show you, I even forgot that the project by Shahira Hamad the house of crime, which takes place, which was positioned at the foot of the arch by Eero Saarinen. Here it is. She tried to express the tensions. In a way, this is a structure which tries to externalize what is hidden by the Apollonian magnificent arch. And so, in a way, to sabotage the arch with bringing on the stage, so to speak, the hidden things, and the hidden things were not glorious. So that's what she imagined at the base of this triumphant arch by Eero Saarinen. And I think she did a good job working with 3D Max. It's a parasite, this structure, but it's a parasite which brings to the fore what was hidden. And what was hidden was the unpleasant aspects, the unpleasantness of crime, of deviant behaviors, and so on, which the Apollonian structure didn't even murmur about, and still doesn't. So, what you see at the bottom here, this strange mechanicist animal, is an attempt to configure itself into what I called the house of crime in the city that was at that time the crime capital of the United States. Now, the General Motors Technical Center in Michigan, a good building, very good building, 1948, 1956, designated a National Historic Landmark in 2014. Unfortunately, we saw buildings not very dissimilar, maybe not so large, but not dedicated to these, huge cars, dedicated maybe to meditation or a smaller work done by Tadao Ando, or anyway, something with some sacrality, but there is no sacrality here at all. It's just, well, I'm wrong. It is the sacrality of the car, its majesty, the car, the real God of our time. Still at that time, this is the building, an international style building. But considering the time when it was built, 1948, 1956, at exactly mid-century, 20th century, the building now has a historical status. Now it's a National Historic Landmark, was designated in 2014 because it has attributes of a good architecture belonging to that time. And it was built by a famous architect, Eero Saarinen. So even a modernist building could become a national design landmark. What is this? I think this is a house he built. No, I was wrong, actually. His father died before him. Because we see here, this is the house that he built for his mother, the widowed mother. So his father died before Saarinen died. And this is the house in the United States, a modernistic house, mid-century house. Now the Irwin Union Bank and Trust in Columbus, Indiana, 1950, 1954. You see almost all his buildings were designated National Historic Landmarks. Interesting skylights. a very skillfully designed staircase. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology buildings at Cambridge, Massachusetts, 1950-1955. The MIT, that is Massachusetts Institute of Technology Chapel, and the Chrysler Auditorium. An interesting chapel. Eero Saarinen. On the campus of MIT in the United States. A very fine brickwork, very fine brick arches. We remember what Louis Kahn said. I asked the brick what it wants to be, and the brick said, I want to be an arch. But the conjunction between the brickwork for the arch and the foot built in concrete is again a masterclass in architecture. How well the concrete part receives the two arches that rest on it. And a very heavy building looks less heavy. Also interesting what he did with the light, because in this way the light becomes corporeal. It gets a body, so to speak, a physical body, but there is the transcendence of light, and then there is the physicality of light obtained through this element, architectonic element hanging from the top. You are almost, asked, what do you think of, what is the metaphor here? What's the symbolism of this? Maybe it's a commentary on the fragility of human life, and maybe even on the fragility of faith itself. It's kind of a snow of light. University of Michigan School of Music in Ann Arbor in Michigan, 1951, 1956. In Ann Arbor is a famous university in the United States. He designed also for Yale. He designed for MIT. He designed for Ann Arbor. The Milwaukee County War Memorial in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1952-1957. This is a building very close neighbor to a museum, the museum built by Santiago Calatrava. I visited this building and I liked it more than the building by Calatrava. It's less spectacular, but it's a very good building. This one is by, yes, Eero Saarinen. And here you see in the lower right corner a fragment of the building by Calatrava. There is a very well-designed staircase here, and I hope you can see it. You see in the background here the building by Calatrava, and this is the building by Eero Saarinen. And the staircase, actually there are two, but I was referring to the one on the right. Although the building is less spectacular than the one designed by Calatrava, I find it more serious and in a way even more sensitive. This is a view towards the courtyard from the staircase that I mentioned. And I think it's very skillfully done. You see the concrete work, and then you see the parapets of the stairs. I wish I had more pictures of it, but you can find them easily on Google Images. Firestone Bar Chapel, the college, Stephens College, Columbia, Missouri, 1953, 1956. Eero Saarinen. Woven interior walls, woven ceiling. Fine work. And a happy marriage ceremony. Let's only hope it didn't end up in divorce. The Miller House in Columbus, designated a National Historic Landmark in 2000s. What does it say here? I don't think we have to read all of this text. I guess it was renovated, and now it belongs to the Indianapolis Museum of Art. A large house. And Concordia Senior College, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 1953, 1958. He built a lot, and I don't show all his works here. I only hope I have the ABC Tower in New York, which I like very much, included in the presentation. Eero Saarinen. Now back to furniture design, the pedestal series from 1954, 1957, again designed for Knoll Associates, includes the famous Tulip Chair. That's it, the Tulip Chair by Eero Saarinen. Another house at Vassar College, or it's not a private house, it's part of the college, is a dormitory actually. Is it called Emma Hartmann? No, it's house. It's called house, but it's a dormitory for students at this famous college, Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York, 1954, 1958. Another good building by Eero Saarinen, a public, a public building with furnitures by him. The United States Chancery Building in Oslo, in Norway, 1955, 1959, 1955, 1959. A Nordic building, if I am to call it so. A governmental building in Norway by Eero Saarinen. but very well crafted. It is a triangular box, but the treatment of the facades does have complexity, rhythm. It's alive. Another one in London, in England, from the same period, United States Chancery Building in London. I guess there wasn't too much freedom for these governmental buildings. So his buildings are do express, do say this is the government's building. A little bit frightening that eagle there with its wings a little bit too emphatically spread, and even the facade is has a rhythmicity that worries me a little bit in its regularity, even though it is implied a certain diagonal there. It's still a governmental building. For my taste, a little bit not very luminous. What is this? This is we saw sketches of this ring. It's this building, David S. Ingos ring in New Haven, Connecticut, 1956-1958. A remarkable structure and a remarkable expressivity, architectural expressivity, almost expressionistic. So the structure of the buildings is expressed honestly towards the outside, and the result is convincing and stimulating for the audience and for the sportsmen, the hockey players on the ice rink. The IBM manufacturing and training facility in Rochester, Minnesota, 1956-1958. This is almost like a building by Arne Jacobsen, international style, refined, simple, and chromatically engaging, almost surreal, chromatically speaking. And so very different from the previous building, which was organic, with fluidities, with curves. And now we see his skill also with rectangularity. Eero Saarinen, 1958, less than 70 years ago. Steel structure. I like this building very much. Now we arrive at a spectacular, almost unexpected, although we saw that he was capable of working with the fluidities, total fluidities or the fluid totalities. He took out the titles of the two books with a studio run by Zaha Hadid in Vienna, in Vienna. TWA terminal in New York City, in New York, 1956, 1962, also listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2005. And this is the building. And I took once a plane from this remarkable building, which is like a bird spreading its wings. And the interior, you have to consider that this was built at a time when parametry parametric design was not afforded. Computers didn't exist, so it was an organic building, some amplitude in terms of scale. All the work was done manually. Look at that reception desk. It's very sculptural and very convincing, even functionally. Remarkable building by Eero Saarinen. Maybe not so much from the outside as from the inside. The inside is complex, and the curves stimulate each other, and there is an interplay between them that is ludic and enticing. The Hill College house, undergraduate dormitories, again, it's called house, but it's a dormitory building at the University of Pennsylvania. Fine brickwork. The way he receded the windows gives the impression that the walls, the exterior walls, are very thick, almost fortress-like. A research center, IBM Research Center, New York, 1957, 1961. A huge building. It's just a fragment of what much later became the Apple headquarters, designed by Sir Norman Foster. Bell Telephone Corporate Laboratories in New Jersey. So the same man who built that organic building for TWA also built this building. Interesting, interesting duality. And now this is a building. It's the same actually, but it was abandoned. I mean, here I don't know when this picture was taken. I'll show some pictures now from the time when it was abandoned. You see at the bottom, abandoned America, but it was rescued. So it came back to life, fortunately. And this is how it looks like now, joyously sprinkled with colored pieces of furniture. Building in an administrator for this manufacturer of heavy machineries. We are a good building by very good building by Eero Saarinen. A lot of metal went into this building, but it's assumed properly. I like the tension between the trees, meaning nature, and the metallic building, meaning man. The interior is luminous and pristine. And there you see some pieces of, equipment that this, manufacturer in the United States produced. A great picture of a detail of the structure. Almost musical, very well coordinated, all parts coming together sensitively and convincingly, structurally speaking. Fine work. He knew how to work with metal as well. This is another college in New Haven, Connecticut. It's part of the Yale University. So back to the wall, to the masonry wall, and yet there are, large surfaces of glass, but there is some balance between the wall and the window. Now this is another famous work by him, the Dulles International Airport in Chantilly, Virginia, 1958-1963. Close to Washington, D.C. Interesting how the structure goes here. You see the pillar going through this opening of this canopy and going through it and then suspending the the canopy. So the structure has also aesthetical attributes, if not ornamental. The model. Yes, it is very subtly done, the structure. Again, the pillars, from the pillars is suspended the canopy, but in this way, it's something that has to be noticed. During construction. It is remarkable, this detail, because you would expect, even if slanted, the supports to reach the slab, and instead the supports go through the slab. So it seems surreal in a way, you know, on what is supported the, the roof, the slab, the curved slab. Well, it is suspended from these slanted pillars, but you don't see this, you know, immediately. It's a very subtle thing that Eero Saarinen did here. I imagine a column which grows towards a beam, and at the point where, you know, where to it was to reach the beam, there is an opening, and actually the columns go through the beam and without actually touching it, you know. So you could have some kind of a surreal feeling. What is this? Lincoln Center, Vivian Beaumont Repertory Theater, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts Library and Museum. And this architect died at 51, and until 51, you see how many buildings he produced, and so diverse. North Christian Church, Columbus, Indiana, 1964. Maybe a little bit too assertive, too without any doubts, the spire. I recall the priest in Winterlight, the great movie by Ingmar Bergman, where he was coughing a lot. And he was coughing a lot exactly because what he was preaching was not quite in accordance with his inner thoughts and feelings. And I guess he had some doubts in the exercise of his preaching, and those doubts express themselves through the coughing. Well, I don't see too much coughing, so to speak, in this building. So it is a form of faith that is unrestrained and too obviously sure of itself. I am tempted to interpret in this way this work by Sullivan. Sorry, not Sullivan, Saarinen. But the space within is interesting, and it's just that the spire seems to be too optimistically expressing its certitude that God sees this, that the elan vital towards the above, towards God, is undisturbed by any kind of shadow, so to speak, Jungian shadow, psychological shadow. The plan is a hexagon. Now, this is the building that I mentioned earlier, and I'm glad I have it included in this presentation because it is a very good building, a tall building, very sober. I passed by this building a few times, and I always liked it without knowing at that time that it was designed by Eero Saarinen. You know, you would say, what's so special about this building is the refinement of the essential elements of its composition is and the materials. It's a black tower. You know, it has gravity. It's not a vulgar tower. It has gravity. It has seriousness. Otherwise, of course, it is an office building built for CBS in Manhattan. Eero Saarinen. And I think this is the last work that I show today, the Athens Airport. It was built after he died, based on his sketches. Maybe some more elaborate plans were done by his office. I don't know. I look at the sketches, and well, the building as it was built is like this. Not quite the same thing, but he initiated the design process for the Athens airport in Greece, of course. But when it was built, he was already dead. Let's imagine he could have lived easily for at least other 30 years, but he didn't. And this is the section that he drew, the sketch. Well, something of the spirit of this sketch was not achieved in the built work, but what can you do? This is one of the fatalities of death and of the unpredictability of fate. I like this sketch though, but there is here an organic quality, although a little bit anxious, I feel, that was not realized in the built work. Thank you. And happy birthday, Eero Saarinen.